Chosen one. I need you to pause everything for a moment. There is a reason you have been feeling pulled toward silence lately. It is not random that conversations have been drying up, that you feel less desire to explain yourself, that something inside you has been whispering "not yet" when you want to speak. This is not isolation, this is alignment. And this message is reaching you at the exact moment it was meant to, because God is asking something very specific from you right now. If you feel that quiet pull in your spirit as you hear these words, stay. This is exactly where you need to be. Let me describe what has been happening to you recently, and I want you to be honest with yourself about whether this resonates. You've been talking more than necessary, explaining yourself to people who were not really listening, defending your decisions to those who had no right to question them in the first place, sharing your plans with people who were never assigned to walk alongside you. And every time you spoke something inside, you felt lighter for a moment, but then heavier than before. That heaviness is not guilt, it is not anxiety, it is a signal. The exhaustion you have been carrying does not come from your work. It does not come from your responsibilities. It comes from speaking too much about things that were meant to remain sacred. You have been releasing what should have been contained, and your spirit knows it, even if your mind has not caught up yet. But this goes deeper than just talking too much. The real question is why you have been talking so much. And if you are willing to look honestly, you will find the roots, the need to be understood, the need to be validated, the need to prove that you are on the right path. When was the last time you felt fully at peace without explaining yourself to anyone? When was the last time you trusted that your silence was enough? When was the last time you let God speak for you instead of rushing to speak for yourself? The gaps in your answers to those questions, that is exactly what God has been paying attention to, not to judge you, to redirect you, because what you are experiencing right now is not a malfunction, it is the signal. God is not punishing your openness. He is not frustrated with your need for connection. He is redirecting your energy because something significant is being prepared and your current patterns of speech are interfering with it. When God asks for silence, it is never random. He does not whisper instructions when the stakes are low. The clearer the command, the closer you are to something that requires precision. And right now, the command is unmistakable: be still, be quiet. Let me work. This is not a suggestion. This is not spiritual advice you can consider and set aside. This is a direct instruction from the architect of your life, and he is serious about why he is asking this of you. The world teaches that silence is passive, that if you do not speak up, you will be left behind, that your voice is your power, and withholding it means losing ground. But in the spiritual realm, the opposite is often true. In the world, silence looks like weakness. In the spirit, silence is strategy. What you are being asked to do is not easy. Holding your tongue when you want to explain, staying quiet when you want to defend, keeping sacred things hidden when you want to share this, requires strength most people do not possess. But you are not most people. And that is precisely why this instruction has come to you. In this message, you will understand why God is holding you in this season of silence. You will see what actually happens when you speak too soon, not as punishment, but as spiritual physics. You will learn to distinguish between holy silence that builds authority and fear-based silence that shrinks you. You will discover what God is doing behind the scenes while you wait. And you will receive practical ways to practice this discipline in your daily life. This is not about becoming voiceless. It is about becoming precise. And precision requires training that most people are unwilling to undergo. The silence you have been feeling is not emptiness, it is preparation. The withdrawal from unnecessary conversations is not loss, it is protection. The discomfort you feel when you hold back words that want to escape, that discomfort is the birth pang of a new level of authority being formed in you. But before we go further, we need to change how you see this season entirely. Because right now you might be viewing yourself as someone being silenced, as if something is being done to you against your will. That is not what is happening. And until you understand what is actually taking place, you will resist the very process designed to elevate you. There is a story you may have been telling yourself about this season. It sounds something like this. Why do I have to stay quiet while everyone else gets to speak? Why is God limiting me? Why do I feel so isolated when I'm trying to do everything right? These questions feel valid, they feel honest, but they all come from the same place, the perspective of someone who believes something is being done to them. And that perspective, as understandable as it is, will keep you stuck if you do not release it. Because what if this season is not happening to you? What if it is happening for you? The shift I am asking you to make is not small. It requires you to stop seeing yourself as someone being silenced and start seeing yourself as someone being constructed. God is not the one muting you. He is the architect, and he is building something in you that requires specific conditions to form correctly. Every architect knows that certain phases of construction demand silence. You do not pour a foundation with an audience offering opinions. You do not frame a structure while entertaining distractions. The most critical work happens when no one is watching, when no one is commenting, when the builder has complete focus. That is where you are right now. You are not in a season of limitation. You are in a season of foundation. Look at the pattern throughout Scripture, and you will see this principle repeated without exception. Joseph was hidden in a prison before he ruled a nation. David was hidden in the wilderness before he wore a crown. Moses was hidden for 40 years in the desert before he was sent to deliver millions. Jesus himself was hidden for 30 years before his ministry began. These were not accidents or delays. They were intentional phases of construction that had to happen before elevation could be trusted. The pattern is consistent. Hiding always precedes rising. And if you are in a hidden season right now, it is not because you have been forgotten. It is because you are being prepared for something that requires this kind of formation. There is a critical difference between being ignored and being hidden, and you must understand this deeply, or you will misinterpret everything God is doing. Ignoring is neglect. It means you do not matter, you are not seen, you have been passed over. Hiding is protection. It means you matter so much that premature exposure would damage what is being built. When a master craftsman is working on something valuable, he does not display it in the window for everyone to critique. He keeps it covered, protected, unseen until it is complete. Not because it lacks worth, but because it carries too much worth to be shown unfinished. That is what God is doing with you. The feeling of being unseen is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of value. Consider what happens when a work in progress is exposed too early. When an artist shows an incomplete painting, people critique what is not yet finished. Opinions flood in and contaminate the original vision. Energy that should go toward creation gets redirected toward defense and explanation. The same thing happens to you when you speak too soon about what God is building in your life. You invite opinions that were never authorized. You open doors to doubt, criticism, and interference that slow your momentum. You find yourself defending something that was never meant to be debated. Exposure before completion does not accelerate your growth. It contaminates it. And God loves you too much to let that happen to what He is constructing. This is why the instruction to be silent feels so urgent right now. You are close to something. The architect does not give precise commands when the stakes are low. He does not ask for strict obedience when the outcome does not matter. The fact that this message resonates so deeply in your spirit is confirmation that you are in a critical phase of construction. The foundation being laid in you right now, the patience, the restraint, the trust, the discipline, these are not delays. They are load-bearing walls that will hold everything God plans to build on top of them. Without this hidden work, nothing visible would stand. So, I am asking you to release the victim narrative. Stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what is being built in you. The architect has not abandoned his project. He is simply working on the parts that no one else needs to see yet. And when the construction is complete, when the covering is finally removed, what stands will not need explanation. It will not need defense. It will speak for itself. But that day is not today. Today, your role is to trust the builder, stay under the covering, and let the silent work continue without interference. Now that you understand you are not being silenced, but being built, we can move into the first tactical instruction God is asking you to follow. This is not philosophy. This is strategy. And the strategy begins with something that sounds simple but will require more strength than most things you have ever done. Withdraw your energy from places where it is being wasted. You have been leaking power without realizing it, dispersing yourself into conversations and explanations that were never meant to receive what you carry. The first move toward alignment is to stop the leak and begin gathering yourself back. The world defines silence as absence, the absence of sound, the absence of action, the absence of power. But in the spiritual dimension, silence operates completely differently. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is discipline. It is the presence of restraint, the presence of self-control, the presence of power that is being held rather than scattered. When you choose not to speak, you are not doing nothing. You are doing something that requires far more strength than speaking ever could. You are choosing containment over release, precision over impulse, trust over anxiety. That choice is not passive. It is one of the most active decisions you can make. Think about a seed that has been planted in soil. It makes no noise underground. It does not announce its growth. It does not demand attention or validation. But beneath the surface, it is doing the most important work of its entire existence, pushing roots downward, gathering nutrients, preparing for the moment it will break through into the light. If that seed tried to make noise before it was ready, if it tried to announce itself before it had established its foundation, it would die. The silence is not a delay in its growth. The silence is the condition that makes growth possible. You are in your underground season right now. The quiet is not holding you back. The quiet is allowing you to develop roots that will sustain everything that comes next. Your energy is not infinite. Every time you speak, you release a portion of it into the world. Every explanation costs something. Every defense drains something. Every unnecessary conversation takes from a reserve that could be used for creation, for focus, for the things that actually matter. And if you are honest with yourself, you will recognize where your energy has been going lately, explaining decisions to people who did not need to know, defending yourself to people who had no authority to judge, sharing plans with people who were never assigned to support them. These were not connections, they were leaks, and leaks left unchecked will empty even the fullest vessel. Words carry spiritual weight. They are not neutral. When you speak something, you bring it from the internal realm into the external realm, and once it is external, it becomes subject to forces you cannot control. When you speak about your fears, you give them a platform. When you speak about plans that are not yet mature, you expose them to opinions that can contaminate them. When you speak from anxiety, you invite more anxiety into your situation. This is not superstition. This is how spiritual energy operates. And God is asking you to stop releasing what should be protected, stop exposing what should be covered, stop giving weight to things that deserve to remain weightless. There is another way to understand what silence does for you. Think about an archer preparing to release an arrow. When the arrow is pulled back, there is tension. The bow is bent, the string is tight, and everything in that moment wants to release. But a skilled archer does not let go immediately. They hold, they aim, they wait for the exact right moment. And when they finally release, the arrow does not just fly, it strikes with precision and force that would have been impossible without that discipline of holding. Silence in this season is like holding that arrow in place. If you release too early, you lose force. If you hold with discipline, you strike with accuracy. The tension you feel when you want to speak but choose not to, that tension is creating power that will be released at the right time. Silence is not the absence of trust. Silence is trust made visible. When you choose not to speak, you are declaring something to heaven. I do not need to be understood by people because I am already known by God. I do not need to defend myself because my defender is already working. I do not need to explain my path because the one who designed it sees every step. This kind of silence is not weakness. It is one of the purest expressions of faith you can offer. And it is exactly what the architect is asking from you as he continues the construction that will not be revealed until it is complete. Most people think boundaries are about other people, what you will and will not allow others to do to you, how close you let them come, what access you grant them. But the boundaries that matter most do not begin with others. They begin inside your own mind. Before a single word leaves your mouth, you have already spoken it internally. Before you explain yourself to anyone else, you have rehearsed that explanation dozens of times in your own thoughts. If your internal world is chaotic, your external silence will be impossible to maintain. The discipline God is asking from you does not start with controlling your tongue. It starts with controlling the conversation happening inside your head. This is the first layer of boundaries, and without it, everything else will eventually collapse. There are conversations you have been having with yourself that are draining you just as much as any external interaction. You imagine arguments that have not happened yet. You rehearse explanations you may never need to give. You replay past conversations, editing what you should have said, perfecting responses that will never be delivered. You worry about future confrontations, preparing defenses for attacks that may never come. These internal rehearsals feel productive because they feel like preparation. But they are not preparing you for anything. They are exhausting you before the real moment ever arrives. Every mental argument you win against an imaginary opponent costs real energy. Every explanation you practice for someone who never asked takes from your actual reserves. You have been fighting battles in your mind that God never assigned to you, and those battles have left you depleted. The first tactical shift is learning to pause before you engage with your own thoughts. Not every thought that enters your mind deserves your attention. Not every mental conversation needs to be followed to its conclusion. When a thought arises that wants to pull you into rehearsal or replay, when you feel the urge to mentally prepare an explanation or defense, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself a simple question. Does this thought need my engagement right now, or is it just seeking my attention? Most thoughts are not urgent. Most thoughts are simply noise passing through, and they only gain power when you treat them as if they require a response. The discipline of internal silence means learning to observe your thoughts without investing in them, to notice them without negotiating with them, to let them pass without following them into endless corridors of imaginary conversation. There is a redirection that will change everything if you practice it consistently. Instead of rehearsing conversations with people in your mind, redirect that energy upward. When you catch yourself preparing what you will say to someone, stop and say it to God instead. When you find yourself defending your decisions internally, bring that defense to the one who already understands. When worry about what others think begins to spiral, hand that concern to the only one whose opinion actually determines your worth. Prayer is speech that heals and restores. Mental rehearsal is speech that exhausts and depletes. They may feel similar in the moment, but their effects on your spirit are completely opposite. Every time you catch yourself spinning in internal dialogue, you have an opportunity to redirect that energy toward the source that will actually replenish you rather than drain you. When you begin practicing internal silence, certain things will rise to the surface that have been hidden beneath the noise. You will notice impatience you did not know you carried. You will feel the discomfort of not having everything figured out. You will become aware of how much you have relied on mental activity to avoid simply being present. Insecurity will surface. The need to control outcomes will become obvious. The fear of being forgotten or overlooked will make itself known. This is not a sign that you are failing at the discipline. This is the discipline working exactly as it should. Silence does not create these things, it reveals them. And what is revealed can finally be addressed, healed, and released. The noise was never protecting you from these realities. It was only delaying your encounter with them. As you practice this internal discipline, something remarkable will begin to happen. Your nervous system will start to settle. The constant low-level anxiety that has been humming beneath everything will begin to quiet. Clarity will return because there is no longer so much interference competing for your attention. You will find that you can hear God more clearly, sense direction more accurately, and feel peace more consistently. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have stopped generating internal noise that drowns out everything else. When you stop feeding the chaos inside, peace finally finds room to grow. And that peace will become the foundation from which you move into the next layer of discipline, the words that actually leave your mouth. You have begun the work of quieting the internal conversation. You are learning to observe your thoughts without being pulled into every mental rehearsal they demand. Now, we move to the next layer, the one that most people see as the real challenge, controlling what actually leaves your mouth. This is where internal discipline meets external reality. This is where the work you have been doing in your mind becomes visible in your interactions. And this is where most people who carry a calling leak their power without ever realizing what they are losing. The words you speak are not just communication, they are energy transfers, and every transfer has a cost. There are 3 patterns of verbal leakage that you need to recognize in yourself, because until you see them clearly, you cannot stop them. The first is over-explaining. This is when you give 10 reasons for a decision that only required 1. When someone asks a simple question and you respond with a monologue, when you feel the need to justify every choice, every boundary, every direction you are taking, the root of over-explaining is not thoroughness, it is insecurity. You explain too much because part of you is not sure you deserve to make the decision you made, so you try to build a case that will convince both the other person and yourself. The second pattern is over-defending. This is when you respond to every criticism, correct every misunderstanding, and feel compelled to set the record straight whenever someone has the wrong impression of you. The root of over-defending is not integrity, it is fear. Fear that if you do not control how others perceive you, something bad will happen. The third pattern is oversharing. This is when you tell people about plans before they are formed, about blessings, before they are secured, about what God is doing, before He has finished doing it. The root of oversharing is not generosity. It is impatience and a hunger for validation that cannot wait for the proper time. Every one of these patterns costs you something real. Over-explaining costs you energy that could be used for creation and forward movement. Over-defending costs you peace that could be used for focus and clarity. Over-sharing costs you protection that could be preserved if you simply waited. But there is another cost that is harder to see, and it relates directly to your positioning in the world. Think about a negotiation, any negotiation, whether for a salary, a deal, or an opportunity. If you reveal your entire strategy before the conversation even begins, you lose leverage. If you explain every reason behind your position, you give the other party ammunition to argue against each one. If you defend yourself before you are even attacked, you appear weak and uncertain. The same principle applies to your life. When you speak too much too soon, you give away strategic advantage that silence would have preserved. Some battles are lost, not because you lacked strength, but because you talked away your position before the battle even began. The tactical shift here is simple, but requires constant practice. Before you speak, pause. In that pause, ask yourself 3 questions. First, does this need to be said at all? Not everything that is true needs to be voiced. Not everything you think needs to become a statement. Second, does this need to be said by me? Sometimes the truth needs to come out, but you are not the one assigned to deliver it. Sometimes your silence creates space for someone else to speak, or for God to reveal what needs to be revealed without your involvement. Third, does this need to be said right now? Timing matters as much as content. A word spoken at the wrong moment loses its power, while the same word spoken at the right moment can shift everything. If the answer to any of these 3 questions is no, hold your tongue. This is not suppression. This is selection. You are not silencing yourself. You are curating what you release. Chosen one. The goal of this discipline is not to make you voiceless. It is to make your voice weighty. When you speak less, every word you do speak carries more impact. When you stop filling space with unnecessary sound, the words you choose to release land with force. God is not removing your voice. He is refining it. He is burning away the filler, the excess, the nervous chatter that dilutes your authority. People who carry true authority do not rush to be heard. They do not need to dominate conversations or prove their presence through volume. They speak when it matters, and when they speak, people listen not because they demanded attention, but because their restraint earned it. Silence is the language of confidence, and confidence, the kind that is rooted in knowing who you are and whose you are, does not need constant expression to be felt. It simply is, and that presence, that settled certainty, is what you are being trained to carry. You have learned to quiet the noise in your mind. You have begun to control what leaves your mouth. Now we arrive at the third and final layer of boundaries, and this one will require something different from you. It will require you to make decisions about people not out of judgment, but out of stewardship. Because the truth is that not everyone in your life right now is supposed to have access to where you are going. Some people were assigned to a previous season. Some were never assigned at all. And the access you've been granting freely is costing you more than you realize. God is not just asking you to be quiet. He is asking you to be selective about who gets to be close while He completes what He is building. Not everyone who asks about your life deserves an answer. Not everyone who shows interest in your plans has earned the right to know them. Not everyone who listens to you is listening for your benefit. There are people in your life right now who collect information but never offer support. They ask questions, they remember details, they seem engaged, but when you actually need them, they are nowhere to be found. There are others who listen out of curiosity rather than care. They want to watch your story unfold the way someone watches a show, entertained by the developments but uninvested in the outcome. And there are some who listen while quietly waiting for you to fail, not because they hate you, but because your success would challenge something they believe about themselves or the world. None of these people are evil, but none of them are assigned to your next season either. You may have noticed that some relationships have been shifting recently without any obvious cause. Conversations that used to flow easily have become strained or shallow. People you once felt close to have become distant, and the distance does not feel like conflict. It just feels like fading. Invitations have slowed. Connections have dried up. If you have been interpreting this as loss, I need you to reconsider. What feels like relational death may actually be divine surgery. God sees what you cannot see. He knows who would drain you at the next level, who would distract you from what requires focus, who would speak doubt into what requires faith. And because He loves you, He is creating separation before you even have to make the difficult choice yourself. Not everyone who left your life was stolen by an enemy. Some were removed by the architect because they were not part of the blueprint for what comes next. The boundaries you need to establish with people do not require announcements or explanations. You do not have to tell anyone that you are pulling back. You do not have to justify why you are less available or why you share less than you used to. You simply do it. You answer questions with fewer details. You respond to invitations with less frequency. You stop volunteering information that was not requested. You become present, but not accessible, kind, but not open, cordial, but not intimate. These shifts do not require confrontation. They do not require a speech about boundaries. They only require your quiet, consistent action. And the people who are truly assigned to your journey will not be offended by your new posture. They will respect it because something in them recognizes that you are protecting what matters. As you practice this relational discipline, you will discover something important. Silence reveals loyalty without requiring confrontation. When you stop constantly reaching out, you see who reaches back. When you stop filling every gap in conversation, you see who is comfortable with the space. When you stop explaining yourself, you see who trusts you without needing explanations. The relationships that survive your silence are the ones that were real. The ones that fade were built on access you should not have been giving in the first place. This is not a loss. This is clarity. And clarity about who belongs in your inner circle is one of the most valuable things you can gain in this season. Chosen one. There is a difference between isolation and protection, and it is important that you feel this difference rather than just understand it intellectually. Isolation feels empty, painful, and abandoned. Protection feels peaceful, even when you are alone. If this season of reduced connection has come with a strange sense of peace underneath the discomfort that is your confirmation that it is from God. You are not being isolated, you are being guarded, and something is guarded only when it is valuable enough to require security. You are in a protected space right now, and the boundaries you are learning to hold in your mind, in your speech, and in your relationships are the walls that keep that protected space intact. What comes next will require all of this preparation, because the mastery you are about to step into demands a foundation that cannot be shaken by external voices or unauthorized access. You are almost ready. You have established boundaries in your mind, in your speech, and in your relationships. You have begun the work of containment that most people never attempt. But now we must address something that will determine whether this entire season strengthens you or quietly destroys you from the inside. Because there are two kinds of silence, and they look almost identical on the surface. One builds authority and positions you for what is coming. The other erodes your confidence and shrinks you into a smaller version of yourself. If you cannot distinguish between them, you will either resist holy instruction or submit to fear disguised as obedience. The mastery you are being called into requires you to know the difference in real time, not just in theory. Holy silence has a specific quality that you can learn to recognize if you pay attention to what is happening inside you when you choose not to speak. It feels calm, even when it is uncomfortable. There is a groundedness beneath it, a sense that you are choosing restraint rather than having it forced upon you. When you operate in holy silence, you are not afraid to speak, you simply do not feel the need to. You could respond, you could explain, you could defend yourself, but something in you knows it is not necessary. There is peace under the surface, even if the situation is tense. There is clarity about why you are holding back. There is trust that God is handling what you are choosing not to address. This kind of silence does not make you feel small. It makes you feel settled. And that settledness is the evidence that you are moving in alignment with what heaven is asking. Fear-based silence feels completely different, even though the external behavior looks the same. It comes with tightness in your chest, a sense of being trapped or paralyzed. You want to speak, but you are afraid of what will happen if you do. You stay quiet, not because you trust God, but because you fear people. You hold back, not out of strategic restraint, but out of self-protection that has nothing to do with divine instruction. Fear-based silence is accompanied by constant mental rehearsal. You replay what you should have said, what you might say later, what could happen if you ever spoke up. Resentment builds beneath the surface. Anxiety hums continuously. You feel smaller each time you swallow words that needed to be spoken, and over time you begin to lose access to your own voice entirely. Let me give you a practical example so you can see how this plays out in real situations. Imagine you are in a meeting at work and someone takes credit for an idea that was yours. Holy silence in that moment means you choose not to react, not because you are afraid of confrontation, but because you trust that the truth will surface in its own time. You are not avoiding the issue, you are strategically preserving your energy for the right moment, knowing that an emotional reaction would cost you more than it would gain. You leave that meeting still feeling solid, still knowing your worth, still trusting that what is yours cannot be permanently stolen. Fear-based silence in the same situation looks identical from the outside. You say nothing, but inside you are spiraling. You stay quiet because you are afraid of being seen as difficult, afraid of conflict, afraid of what speaking up might cost you politically. You leave that meeting feeling diminished, resentful, and smaller than when you walked in. Here is another example that relates to your financial positioning. Imagine you know you are being underpaid for the value you provide. Holy silence might mean you are waiting for the right moment to negotiate, gathering evidence, positioning yourself strategically so that when you do speak, your words carry maximum weight. You are not avoiding the conversation, you are timing it. Fear-based silence in the same situation means you never bring it up at all. You convince yourself that you should be grateful for what you have. You swallow your worth repeatedly until you begin to believe you do not deserve more. That is not holy restraint. That is self-abandonment dressed up as humility. The way to know which silence you are operating in is to ask yourself honest questions in the moment. Why am I staying quiet right now? Am I at peace or am I anxious? Am I choosing this or am I avoiding something? If your honest answer is that you trust God to handle what you are not addressing, you are in holy silence. If your honest answer is that you are afraid of what might happen if you speak, you are in fear-based silence. One draws you closer to God and strengthens your inner authority. The other isolates you from Him and slowly dismantles your confidence. Chosen one, remember that Jesus demonstrated both postures at different times. He was silent before Pilate, not because he was afraid, but because he had nothing to prove to a man who had no authority over his identity. He was bold and forceful in the temple, overturning tables and driving out those who had corrupted sacred space. Same person, same authority, different moments requiring different responses. God is teaching you this same wisdom, when to hold and when to move, when silence serves the mission and when it betrays it. This is mastery, and it cannot be learned from a book. It can only be learned through practice, through paying attention, through being honest with yourself about what is actually driving your choices. Now that you can distinguish between holy silence and fear-based silence, we need to address something that will sustain you when the waiting feels unbearable. Because there will be moments when you wonder if anything is actually happening. You are being quiet, you are holding your boundaries, you are doing everything you have been asked to do, and yet nothing visible seems to be changing. The external world looks the same. The breakthrough has not arrived. The situation has not shifted. In those moments, the temptation will be to assume that your obedience is pointless, that the silence is leading nowhere, that God has forgotten what He promised. But I need you to understand something that will anchor you when doubt tries to creep in. The silence you experience on earth does not mean silence in heaven. While you wait, God is working, and His activity does not require your awareness to be effective. Heaven is never idle, even when your life feels completely still. The architect does not take breaks from construction just because you cannot see the progress. Right now, while you hold your tongue and guard your energy, God is rearranging people in ways you cannot orchestrate. He is moving hearts that you have no access to influence. He is shifting opinions in rooms you will never enter. He is softening situations that seemed permanently hardened. He is removing obstacles that you did not even know existed. He is closing doors that would have led you somewhere dangerous and opening others that you have not yet discovered. None of this requires your involvement. In fact, your involvement would complicate it. Your silence is not inaction, it is cooperation with a process that works best when you stay out of the way. There are narratives about you that have been circulating without your knowledge, and God is correcting them without requiring your defense. Lies that were spoken are being exposed. Assumptions that were made are collapsing under their own weight. People who misunderstood you are beginning to see clearly, not because you explained yourself, but because truth has a way of surfacing when it is not forced. This is divine vindication, and it operates on a completely different timeline than human vindication. When you defend yourself, you operate on your own strength and your own timing. When you let God defend you, you operate on His strength and His timing is always more strategic than yours. The restraint you are practicing right now is creating space for God to advocate for you in ways that your words never could. Consider how this applies to your practical positioning in the world. Think about a promotion or opportunity you have been waiting for. While you remain silent, your consistent work is being noticed by people whose attention you could never have demanded. Decisions about your future are being discussed in conversations you are not part of. Your name is being mentioned in rooms you have never entered. If you were constantly talking about what you deserve, constantly lobbying for recognition, constantly explaining why you should be chosen, you would actually be undermining the very process that leads to genuine elevation. But because you are quiet, because you are focused on the work rather than the reward, you are being positioned as someone who can be trusted with more. Silence in this context is not passivity. It is the posture of someone who knows their worth does not depend on their ability to advertise it. While God works externally on your circumstances, He is also working internally on your character. The silence you are practicing is not just protecting what is outside you, it is transforming what is inside you. Your emotional reactions are slowing down. The impulse to defend yourself is weakening. The need for external validation is losing its grip. You are being trained to respond rather than react, to assess rather than assume, to trust rather than manipulate. This kind of internal restructuring does not happen in noisy environments. It requires the quiet you have been given. And the person who emerges from this season will be capable of handling things that the previous version of you could not have sustained. You are not just waiting for your circumstances to change. You are being changed so that you can steward what is coming. Breakthroughs rarely arrive with announcements and fanfare. They come quietly, a phone call you did not expect, a realization that shifts everything, a door that opens without effort, a problem that resolves itself. The silence you are practicing is keeping you sensitive enough to notice these moments when they arrive. People who are constantly generating noise miss the subtle shifts that signal change. They are so busy talking about what they want that they fail to recognize when it is being offered. But you're learning to be still, to watch, to listen. And that attentiveness will serve you when the breakthrough comes in a form you did not anticipate. Chosen one. There is only one thing God needs from you in this season, and it is not your strategy, your explanation, your defense, or your management. What He needs is your obedience. Obedience that says, I will trust you without seeing. Obedience that says, I will wait without complaining. Obedience that says, I will let you be God without trying to help. That posture of surrender is not weakness. It is the most powerful position you can occupy because it removes every obstacle between you and what heaven is trying to release into your life. Stay quiet, stay faithful, and know that the work being done in your silence is greater than anything you could accomplish with your noise. Everything you have learned will remain theory until you practice it in the ordinary moments of your daily life. Understanding silence is not the same as living it. Agreeing with these principles is not the same as embodying them. The gap between knowing and doing is where most people lose what they gained in moments of revelation. They hear truth, they feel moved, they resolve to change, and then they return to their regular patterns within days because they never translated insight into action. God is not interested in giving you information that makes you feel spiritually elevated for an hour. He is interested in transformation that restructures how you move through every single day. This chapter is about bringing heaven down to earth, taking the silence you have been learning about and weaving it into the fabric of your actual life. The morning sets the tone for everything that follows. Before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone, before you allow the world to pour its demands into your mind, there needs to be a space of intentional quiet. This does not require hours. It requires 5 to 10 minutes of sitting in stillness with God, not asking for anything, not listing your needs, not rehearsing your concerns, just being present. In that space, you are establishing something important. You are declaring that your first attention belongs to the one who is building you, not to the notifications competing for your focus. You are grounding yourself in stillness before you encounter the chaos that every day inevitably brings. How you begin your morning shapes how you respond to everything that follows. If you start from a place of centering, you carry that steadiness with you. If you start from a place of reactivity, you spend the rest of the day catching up. Throughout your day, you will encounter moments that trigger your impulse to speak. Someone will say something that irritates you. Someone will ask a question that feels intrusive. Someone will challenge you in a way that makes you want to defend yourself. In each of these moments, there is a small gap between the stimulus and your response, and that gap is where your freedom lives. Before you reply, pause. Take one breath. Ask yourself whether this response is necessary, whether it is the right time, whether you are the right person to deliver it. This pause will feel unnatural at first because you have been conditioned to react immediately, to fill every silence with sound, to answer every question the moment it is asked. But that conditioning is what got you into the pattern of leaking energy in the first place. The pause is where you reclaim your power to choose rather than simply react. When the urge arises to share something God is doing in your life, redirect that energy before it becomes external speech. Instead of telling another person about the blessing, the insight, or the progress, tell God. Thank Him for what is happening. Acknowledge it in prayer rather than in conversation. This is not about being secretive or withholding joy from others. It is about protecting things that are still forming, keeping sacred what has not yet matured, and learning to let your primary audience be heaven rather than people. There will be a time to share. There will be a moment when it is right to speak about what God has done. But that moment is not every moment, and learning to discern the difference is part of the discipline you are developing. At the end of each day, you need a practice that allows you to release what has accumulated without leaking it into relationships that cannot hold it. Journaling serves this purpose in a way that conversation often cannot. You can write what you wanted to say, but chose not to. You can process frustrations, hopes, fears, and revelations on paper rather than dispersing them into the atmosphere through speech. This kind of writing is not for anyone else to read. It is between you and God, a space where you can be completely honest without worrying about how your words will be received or interpreted. What you write, you release. And what you release on paper does not need to be released through your mouth. Chosen. 1. Perhaps the most important long-term practice is learning to be comfortable with being misunderstood. Not everyone will understand why you have changed. Not everyone will appreciate your new boundaries. Some people will interpret your silence as coldness, your restraint as arrogance, your selectivity as rejection. You cannot control their interpretations, and attempting to do so will pull you right back into the patterns of over-explaining that drained you before. Let them misunderstand. Let them wonder. Let them form whatever conclusions they form. Your job is not to manage their perception of you. Your job is to steward what God has placed inside you, and that stewardship requires a willingness to be seen inaccurately by people who do not have the context to see you clearly. The peace that comes from releasing that need for universal understanding is worth more than any approval you could earn through explanation. Let me leave you with the truth that will anchor everything you have received in this message. Your silence is not your limitation. Your silence is your shield. A shield is not a weapon of attack. It does not help you win by advancing aggressively. It helps you win by protecting what matters while you wait for the right moment to move. That is exactly what your silence is doing right now. It is keeping you in alignment when everything around you invites chaos. It is preserving your peace when reaction would destroy it. It is holding you steady in a posture that allows God to complete what He started without interference. While others exhaust themselves explaining, defending, and proving, you are being trained in a different kind of strength, the strength of someone who knows that not every battle requires their participation. This season of silence is not permanent. There will come a moment when God releases your voice again, and when that moment arrives, you will not have to force anything. You will not have to push or strive or demand to be heard. Your words will carry weight because they have been refined in the fire of restraint. You will speak not from anxiety, but from authority, not from the need to be understood, but from the clarity of someone who has stopped needing external validation to feel secure. The discipline you are learning now is forging something in you that cannot be produced any other way. And when you finally open your mouth in the right moment, people will listen, not because you demanded their attention, but because your presence earned it. I know there are moments when this feels like falling behind, when it seems like everyone else is moving forward while you stand still, when the silence feels less like strategy and more like stagnation. But I need you to hear this clearly. You are not falling behind. You are being positioned. You are not missing opportunities. You are being protected from the wrong ones. You are not standing still. You are being anchored so deeply that what comes next will not be able to shake you. Positioning always feels slower than progress. But when God positions you, what emerges does not just succeed for a moment, it lasts. Chosen one. This message found you because it was meant to, not by accident, not by algorithm, but by alignment. If something in your spirit confirmed what you heard today, I invite you to mark this moment. Leave a word in the comments. It could be aligned, it could be I receive this, it could be whatever rises in your heart as a declaration between you and God that you heard, and you are ready to walk in obedience. If someone came to your mind while you were listening, share this with them. They may be in the same silent season, needing the same confirmation that they have not been forgotten. Stay grounded, stay faithful, and remember your silence is your strength, your